One of my assignments while I was in India was to measure the impact of the mothers groups on the empowerment of the women. One of their goals is to empower the mothers of sponsored children. And one of the methods that we used to do that was to sit in the groups of mothers, usually about 10 to 15 mothers, and just ask them to share stories about how their lives had changed by participating in these mothers groups. One of the women that I met there, one of the mothers, for the purposes of this story I'll call her Preeti, she shared a story about some debt that she and her husband had taken on in order for him to take some business ventures to move the family ahead. And it seemed like everything he tried, he kept failing in business, and they kept taking on more debt and more debt to the point where there was just no way they were going to be able to pay that debt back. And all the different debt collectors, the loan sharks, kept coming to their house and were becoming more and more aggressive. They were coming on a daily basis. And it got to the point where Preeti and her husband didn't see any alternatives, and they began discussing the option of suicide, for both of them, and discussing who might care for their child. Over the past few decades in this part of India, in Andhra Pradesh, there have been a lot of debt suicides where people get in too much debt and there's just no way that they can get out of it, and they don't see any other alternative. But instead of suicide, Preeti and her husband decided to just flee the situation. And she said that the only people who even seemed to notice that she was gone were the debt collectors, who were pretty angry. But the only people who came after her were these mothers, these other mothers. Even her family didn't come. When the mothers found her, they tried to persuade her to come back because they knew that where she was living, her child wouldn't have the opportunity to go to school. But they knew that in order for Preeti to come back, she would need some protection. So they said, why don't you take a loan from the mothers group to pay off all your other loans? We have a much lower interest rate. We'll help you work out a repayment schedule that you can manage. And this is probably the most important part. We'll stand by you. We'll risk our own reputations to protect you. When the debt collectors come, you let them know that you're with us and we are going to stand up for you in this neighborhood. So after some time of talking this through and a lot of persuasion, Preeti and her husband decided to take that risk to come back to the city, and they did. And when I met Preeti, she had started a small provisions store and was earning some income from that. Her husband was able to find a job as a driver at an IT company, and it was the most steady work he had had in years. And the loan that they had taken to repay all their other debts, when I met her, she was just a few months away from finishing paying off that loan. And she said that when that was done, when they finished paying off that loan, she and her family would be in the best situation that they had been financially in their entire lives. And their child's back in school. So it's an example of the way that one person's life can really be transformed because these other women felt empowered to take action. They didn't wait for an organization or for the men in their community to take action. They reached out and they took care of Preeti, and they told her that they would protect her. And through that, they've empowered her to help others.